Machines now set the pace, and workers struggled to keep stride.
They used to have foremen, straw boss. They had so many bosses around.
But they were there to see that the operations were run, and they were there to see that they were running fast. Couldn't keep up, he was gone.
Even that mural up there doesn't give you all of it. I think Rivera did a good job, but the hostility of the supervision to the workers is not displayed in there.
Dave Moore, a former Rouge production worker, finds in the murals just one compelling image of management.
Expression on his face, that was just typical of supervision at the time, you know. They had no respect or no regard.
Rivera modeled the face after Charles Sorensen, the Rouge's hard-nosed production manager. Sorensen demanded a military-like discipline in his factories and enforced a strict prohibition against labor unions. But Rivera gave only a hint of this harsh reality. He removed most of the domineering foremen and plant guards from the scene, leaving a vision of self-direct and automatic machinery. Instead of frenzied speed-up, Rivera froze the action. His mural projects a moment of cooperative labor, a dance-like unity of workers from diverse ethnic and racial backgrounds. This, too, was more ideal than real. Inside the plant, employers segregated workers by race and often by ethnicity. Outside the plant, discriminatory policies pressured many Mexican workers to leave Detroit in the early years of the Great Depression. Yet Rivera populated the mural with Hispanic figures modeled after members of his staff. African Americans seeking work at the Rouge usually found themselves in the worst jobs.
99.99% of the black workers at Ford were confined to the foundry. The dirtiest, menial job that the plant could offer.
Dave Moore was one of the few exceptions who worked in a predominantly white department.
Well, to give you an example, I was in a unit where there was over 4,600 people. And out of that, there were 28 of us. 28 blacks out of 4,600.
White and black, Rivera's workers are grim-faced and tight-lipped. Their expressions convey the gravity of their tasks, the strain of their jobs. Given the reality of work at Ford, their faces may also express fear. Fear for their jobs, fear for their safety.
One of the wheels on the crane slipped off the track, and that froze him over this furnace. And of course, 2,900 degrees, he didn't last long. You know, we could hear him screaming, nothing we could do. Saw many others. People lose hands or fingers.
There's something that these murals don't depict, and that is how you were able to get your job. And most of these jobs in the plants were either bought, you had to pay somebody to get the job, or you bought a car from a Ford dealer and he'd give you a letter to get you a job in the plant. The minute the car was paid off, you was laid off because somebody else bought a car and he took your job. And you never knew how long you would hold on to your job. It was a real dictatorship.
Those who protested met with harsh treatment. In March 1932, 6 weeks before Rivera's arrival, Ford guards and Dearborn police shot and killed 5 unarmed men during a demonstration of jobless workers. While Edsel Ford urged a more moderate policy, the aging Henry Ford overruled his son and cracked down on union organizers. Rivera only hinted at this reality. He had no blueprint for change. Instead, he imagined a utopia and hoped his mural would, as he put it, sensitize the worker to his environment and therefore serve the revolutionary process. When the museum unveiled the murals in 1933, some on the political left criticized Rivera for his optimistic view and his failure to condemn auto management.
I spoke to him at one point and said, I thought that you glorified Ford here. And he simply answered by saying, well, I think that what Ford built here can be glorified. He says it's a great human achievement for all that I hate what it did to the workers.
Shelton Taps was one worker who saw in Rivera's imagery a subtle criticism of factory conditions.
The people in the units that use that sand, it's silica sand, as you know, would have appreciated having those gas masks or those face masks with the oxygen tanks that we didn't have. Maybe Diego was saying, this is the way it should be, or this is the kind of protection that workers should have.
Rivera's work provoked a bitter reaction from conservatives. Some objected to art that focused on factory workers, others to imagery borrowed from religion but used to herald medical science. Only the intervention of Edsel Ford, director Valentiner, and hundreds of activists in the People's Museum Association saved the murals from being destroyed. Murals which so dignified labor later inspired the United Auto Workers Union when it challenged employers in 1935, just 2 years after Rivera finished his work.
Oh, I can remember several times the organizers mentioning the murals, and there was such an enthusiasm about them that in one of the local unions on the west side of Detroit, they actually got a couple of the amateur artists who were members of the local union. They painted murals on the stairway leading from the first floor to the second floor, Local 174.
The UAW might have been part of what Rivera envisioned for a factory workforce unified by mass production. Unlike the old craft unions that Ford helped drive from the industry, the UAW opened its ranks to all auto workers, regardless of craft, race, or gender. Ford bitterly opposed the new union, firing supporters and attacking organizers. In 1941, 80,000 Rouge workers walked off the job in protest, forcing the company to accept a government-supervised election for union recognition. The UAW won the vote in a landslide. Reality began to catch up with Rivera's vision. The big machine still dominated the workplace, but union members now challenged the old rules that denied them any voice. Stephen Dimitrov and Lucien Bloch, assistants to Rivera, have returned to Detroit and the murals they helped create a half-century ago. They are sponging soot from the walls, leaving the hardened plaster that absorbed Rivera's paints and his vision.
Of course, you see, we have an advantage. We saw this painting when it was fresh. So we have a very good idea how it should look. Of course, I don't want to be a braggart. 55 years is a long time to remember how it was.
This has not been cleaned. First, I get it wet. Because the paint doesn't come off. It's become part of the wall. Like marble.
Rivera's vision has proved as durable as his paint. Today, human labor is too often a disposable article, its value mocked by plant closings, layoffs, the corporate exodus to low-wage economies. Rivera's vision poses an alternative, the ideal of a cooperative, multiracial workforce holding center stage, the true agents of potential prosperity. Lucien Bloch thinks Rivera would be pleased with the durability of his work.
It's very wonderful to see today that there are lots of people who are from the working class, so-called, that really come and watch. And it would have given Diego a great lift to know that.
Oh, he was.
Because he was painting for the workers.
My impression was that he was a man, an artist, who had not forgotten the working people. And I hope that other artists will pick up the torch that Rivera was carrying at that time to light a way through a dark tunnel to show the contribution that the American working men and women was making, had made, and still are making to this country.
Bye.